Hi, it's Adewale Ademuyiwa from Stresstherapist.net. Welcome to video 2 of my course on how to deal with depression. In video 1, the first video of the course, I stressed the importance of being aware of the coping rules you have become accustomed to using. In this video, I will be going a bit deeper, revealing how these coping rules work, why they have the ability to hold people in depression or in any other negative emotional place for that matter. Then I will finish off by highlighting one very important major thing you can start doing today to feel better about yourself. So you start with this core that's caused you to feel more threatened with life. And that creates a tendency to develop different strategies to try and cope. And one of the strategies that people try to cope with, I refer to as the anchor. Some other psychotherapists will refer to this as the protective belt. So these are a set of behaviors that we develop to try to manage the threats we experienced while we were growing up. So some will develop a tendency to use anger. Some might, because of trust issues, become more paranoid, whilst others will tend to be overly responsible, and others will use a lot of perfectionism. In my experience, I've noticed that if we don't deal with the issues that are in the anchor, no matter whatever procedure we use to try and address our depression, the depression just keeps coming back. So the anchor is like what makes up the person's personality. So you have people saying, I'm just irritable by nature, or I'm just a perfectionist by nature, or you hear people just saying things like, I just tend to avoid, I'm very shy by nature. And these form the part of the person that stops the person breaking free from depression. But now we have a third layer here. And this layer tends to be behaviors, some CBT books will call them maintenance behavior. But I tend to see them as surviving strategies. These are strategies that people use to try and survive life. So sometimes we'll predict a negative future to try and stop ourselves from falling into situations that are outside our control. Maybe we try too hard. Maybe we take too much on, or we isolate ourselves, or we avoid things, or we procrastinate a lot. Maybe self-criticize and at times push people away. So what I found is, because of the difficulties they experienced in the early childhood, people develop this anchor, which is then supported by these survival strategies. Right, so far what we've said is the first layer of stress is because of the genetical changes that occur that sensitizes people to becoming more risk prone, more negative focused. The second layer of stress is the anchor being the personality the person develops to try and manage and cope with the world that they find themselves in. And then the third layer is the survival strategies by which we're trying to survive through life. But then the fourth layer, the pressures that life places on us. What I find is that whilst a person is in primary school, for example, there's a lot of pressure. But once the person reaches maybe university or maybe even gets married, the pressure gets way heavier because we have to take on more responsibilities of parenthood, or even responsibilities to pass our exams at university. So the pressure gets heavier. So we have all these layers of stress. And if you have already watched the depression videos I sent you the links to, you remember this cup. And you remember that I said that right at the top of this cup is our threshold. The threshold, and once we reach our threshold, we begin to experience a turn down, a reduction of the anti-depression hormones that is very necessary for us to cope. Let me explain this a bit clearer. If you have been following many of my articles, you would have noticed I keep talking about a particular hormone called cortisol. Now, cortisol is a very important hormone, and in fact, if we have no cortisol, we would all naturally die. What scientists have now found out is that if you have way too much cortisol in your system, over a long period of time, it begins to cause a reduction in the availability of some important happy chemicals in your system. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone that increases in our system over a period of time when we are subjected to pressure or stressful situations. Normally, cortisol will help us fight back and cope with pressure, but too much of cortisol has the potential of reducing the natural hormones that we need for recovery in depression. You may have heard of these three hormones: norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. It is interesting to note that most antidepressants work to increase the availability of these hormones when treating depression. Now, what kind of impacts can the reduction of these hormones have on us? You see, too little norepinephrine in your system leads to an impairment of your ability to make decisions. It reduces your motivation and makes it difficult for you to perform simple everyday tasks effectively. Too little serotonin causes an increase in feelings of grief. Actually, people can also become more obsessive with certain thoughts when there's not enough serotonin in their system. And too little dopamine causes an inability to experience pleasure. Now, look closely at these effects: increased sense of grief, an inability to feel pleasure, an impairment in your ability to make decisions, a reduction in motivation, and difficulty in performing simple everyday tasks effectively. Look closely at those effects and compare them with your experience of depression. What you will see is a direct match. It is not surprising then that people find it so difficult to experience pleasure or motivate themselves when they are feeling depressed. So how can you begin to use the information in this video now? This is how you can begin to use the information in video 2 of our course now. When you are feeling low, unmotivated, lethargic, or unable to focus, concentrate, or carry out plans, it is important to remember that this may only just be signaling the fact that you are depleted of natural resources that the body needs, because cortisol within your system has drained you of the raw materials necessary to produce the happy chemicals like norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. These are happy chemicals you need. It is really essential that you remember this, because the best way to regain those abilities back requires that you stop doing certain things which you may currently be thinking are helping you, but are really just worsening the problem of depression, and start using strategies that help to strengthen and replenish you. We will go into more details about these replenishing strategies later in the course. But for now, just remembering that there is a tangible scientific reason for feeling depleted, unmotivated, and lethargic can help you start feeling better about yourself.